Let's go further in depth now by calling on our friend, retired Air Force General Michael Hayden. General Hayden, former director of both the CIA and the NSA, currently a principal at the Chertoff Group. Mike, we are so pleased to have you back via telephone. First of all, this whole notion of a Khorasan group, there are some who say there's no such thing. Your take on it?
No, my take is that there is such a thing, and it looks like an attempt by Al-Qaeda Prime, that group along the Afghan-Pakistan border that we really have affected, to get back in the game. And it looks like they've deployed some of the folks they really trust. A fellow named Fadley, who I think I mentioned earlier, knew about 9/11 before it happened, so you know he's in the inner circle, deployed them forward to take advantage of what was going on in Syria. So no, I think it's a real group. I will say this, though, and you're not the first one to ask me this question. This was kind of sprung on the American public, and it's another indication that intelligence folks and policy folks need to kind of get the general public into the circle a little bit earlier so they know what's going on and what they intend to do on their behalf.
Well, it is worth noting that even those who served at the pleasure of President Obama are now calling some of the administration policies into question. For example, Leon Panetta takes to the pages of USA Today. It is the lead story on our parent website, Newsmax.com, and former Secretary Panetta is saying Americans should prepare for a 30-year war against ISIS. General, do you agree with that assessment?
Well, the first thing I'd offer you, JD, is if this is what the book's like while the president is still in office, when his former cabinet members write, I can only imagine what they're going to look like in 3 years. Because you're right, they've been fairly critical, haven't they?
Well,
now, the 30 years war comment. I think what Leon was trying to suggest, and actually Richard Haas, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, has brought this analogy forward earlier, is that Europe suffered from 1618 to 1648 with a 30 years war in which alliances shifted and wars were marked with truces and armistice and wars again, but it was completely unsettled until a new equilibrium had been established, and it took about 30 years. I think that's what Leon was trying to say. I mean, it's not going to be 30 years of American bombing, one hopes, but it's going to take a generation plus for a new equilibrium to establish in the Middle East. And frankly, I agree with that very strongly.
There is word, Mike, of a French agent who defected and is now working with the Khorasan group, teaching them how to make explosives, dealing in tradecraft, etc. Apparently, he was a target in that first round of airstrikes in Syria, but we missed him. Do you have anything to add to what we're hearing from those reports?
I don't. I only know what I read. It's not implausible. It's not something that people with background like mine read things and say, no, that just doesn't ring true. I mean, this one doesn't ring routine, but I would not reject it out of hand. There could be real truth here.
Mike, a little more than a minute left now. The New York Times reporting today that ISIS has been using ammo from the U.S. and other countries that have been supporting the regional security forces fighting against ISIS. Our ammo ending up in the hands of our enemies. What should be done?
Well, we supply our friends. Our friends, like the Iraqis, prove not to be competent. An awful lot of our kit ends up in the wrong hands. I guess one has to be more careful. I mean, keep in mind, there's a lot of talk about giving the Syrian opposition surface-to-air missiles to down Syrian government helicopters and planes that were bombing them. I would be the last person in the world to recommend that, based upon the dynamic you just described, this ending up in the wrong hands.
General Mike Hayden, we thank you for your time and the fact you're going to stay with us through this next break. When we come back, the General and I will discuss the whole notion of boots on the ground. There are already some Americans there in the theater. Will there be more? Should there be more? We will get to that coming up as America's Forum continues here on Newsmax TV.